Have you ever looked at a Pokemon and just wanted to do a run purely based on vibes? Today, we're doing exactly that. We're taking Aggron, a Pokemon overflowing with the maximum cool factor, and we're seeing how fast it can beat Pokemon Emerald. Now, if you're curious about the rules, check the description, and let's just jump right into it. In terms of aesthetics, no one can convince me that Aggron isn't an amazing Pokemon. Its design is top tier, and this little blend of Kaiju and Triceratops vibes, genuinely, it hits the right notes for me. It's classified as the Iron Armor Pokemon, and I think the plate armor theme perfectly matches everything I'm looking for. And if we're being honest, guys, I think Aggron's design is exactly what many of us kind of envision for Rhydon's eventual evolution, rather than whatever this is. But let's stop being superficial, let's stop focusing on the looks alone. Now, if you've watched my other Emerald videos, you might already maybe notice a few differences, and that's because this marks a soft reboot for the series. Recently, there has been new ways to kind of smooth out some of the rough edges on the back end of the Emerald ROM, meaning that the game is now a seamless experience from start to finish, but we'll cover that more as we go on. Gameplay wise, Aggron needs early training, so I'm heavily investing in trainer battles on Route 102, 104, Petalburg Woods, and I'm only skipping the weak trainers like those with the Magikarps and the Wurmples. And now, as we tackle these early battles, let's quickly cover some of the key details about Aggron itself. In terms of stats, let's keep this glass half full. Defensively, Aggron is very similar to Steelix, sporting a massive defense stat, and 110 base attack is more than enough for a solo playthrough. I think the base speed of 50, it's not ideal, but trust me, it could be a lot worse. We've seen a lot worse. Aggron's level up Learnset is also pretty solid. Starting off with Headbutt is already strong, but two things make it even better here. Now first, there's no early body slam like Generation 1. And second, unlike Gen 2 where Return quickly becomes powerful, base friendship in Generation 3 depends on the species. And of course, Aggron only starts off with 35. It means that Return takes ages to surpass Headbutt's power. And this is kind of like a side note, but Gen 3's moveset balance is actually pretty nice. I like it. It avoids that rapid power creep that you see in the first two gens. Usually in those games, you start hitting very overpowered moves in the first 2 or 3 gyms. You get Metal Claw pretty early and it's helpful for several spots. And then you got things like Harden and Iron Defense. They can strategically boost your defense. I didn't personally find much use for them. And then later on you get Iron Tail. It's a 100 base power move. It's got stab. It's undeniably strong. And we are going to have to use it a few times. And I'll talk about this here. Aggron learns a ridiculous number of TMs, 37 of them. And if you're looking at the tutor moves and you're counting the Battle Frontier, it learns an additional 23 of them. So obviously I'm not going to list 60 moves in tiny text here, but if you really want the details, I'm going to start linking the Bulbapedia link in the description, just because I don't put the Learnset up for my Gen 3 runs. And I would say Aggron's TM pool is reminiscent of like a Gen 1 Pokemon like Marowak or Rhydon, where they learn pretty much everything. They get so many powerful special moves despite not really having the special to back it up. And just speaking about Aggron, you get things like Surf, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, Solar Beam, Ice Beam, you name it, Aggron probably learns it, except for Bulk Up. That's notably absent, and that would pretty much solve every problem we have, but no Bulk Up for Aggron today. After this early training segment, I want to quickly recap the basics because it's been a while since we've tackled Emerald. The northern part of Route 104 contains extremely important berries, arguably the most crucial in the early game. Now, cherry berries, they cure paralysis, they're almost always invaluable against Wattson. Lepa berries restore PP, and they are essential if you're doing an Abra route like me, inspired by the speedrun. And this area also holds one of the game's 2 easily accessible Chesto berries to cure sleep if you're trying to do rest or something like that. Emerald does feel like a longer game. It is longer than Gen 1, but already, even this early, this little bitty small section, it kind of sets the tone for strategic resource management, and it's one of the things I love about the game. As I grab Cut and Rustboro and start moving to the north, let's briefly touch on my overlay, the natures, and the abilities. Today, Aggron has an Adamant nature, boost my attack, lower special attack, and it's pretty ideal. I think it's the perfect nature for Aggron. Now, if you're ever confused about what a nature does, if you're wondering, hey, what does Adamant mean? Look at the top left. Notice I have a green up arrow next to attack, and then a down red arrow next to special attack. That'll let you know at a quick glance. Another quick UI note, unlike Generation 1, SPE is speed, located on the bottom right. SPD now refers to special defense, and I'm just clarifying because there was some confusion in the older videos. And also, when enemy stats pop up on the bottom, it's color consistent with my own stats. So at a glance, you can just look and say, hey, purple's the speed, yellow's their attack, so on and so forth, you get it. And I'll expand on the abilities more later. I have something I want to say, but briefly, Aggron has two choices. Rockhead prevents recoil damage. Eventually, it's going to pair really nice with moves like Double Edge. And the other ability, Sturdy, is unfortunately terrible in Gen 3, and I really want to talk about that later, but for now, let's focus on the gameplay. I'm holding off on Roxanne to do some training on Route 116, and I'm going to battle every single trainer with our ultimate goal to hit level 13 for Metal Claw. Remember, I did grab an Ether from Petalburg Woods, and I have 2 Lepa Berries, and those are going to restore our PP. And let me just quickly talk about the Abra strategy. My teleport waypoint is set way back in Petalburg, so I do not want to heal. That way I can use teleport at the end of this section and save a lot of time. These resources give you an additional 30 PP to work with, and in routing is one of my favorite things to kind of like manage the resources during this section, because you have to do a lot of careful planning, and that's pretty much my jam, guys. Now at the end of this little training segment here, I'm going to battle a trainer near the beginning of the route. He has a Machop, and this is going to preview some of Aggron's biggest issues. I want you to just watch this. This low kick does so much damage. Now granted, low kick's power in Gen 3 depends on the opponent's weight, and Aggron, my friends, he's a big beefer. He weighs a massive 794 pounds, and that means this move is going to hit at its maximum strength. Now it's a calculated risk since Machop won't always choose this move, but right here it kind of demonstrates how quickly things can go south here. After that, I pick up 2 trainers in Roxanne's gym. I'm not going to show like detailed battle footage here because it's very tedious to go against rock tops with only Mud Slap, but this will help me hit level 13, which is very necessary for the upcoming gym fight. First, I'm going to do some quick blind run footage from an earlier attempt. This is at level 11 where I tried to skip Route 116 just so I can get a faster time. Now the main issue here is Mud Slap. We just talked about it. It's useful occasionally for like accuracy drops or if all your other moves are resisted, but even when it's super effective, it's barely stronger than a resisted headbutt. Mud Slap's pretty bad. The PP's extremely limited, and Roxanne has 3 Pokemon. Maybe you could use Lepa Berry and have like 20 PP, but I still think that wouldn't be enough. Now there are several parts in this run where I kind of like reflect on possible alternate strategies, but here you can clearly see why level 11 just isn't going to cut it. I can barely even beat the first Geodude. I'm pretty much running out of PP, and eventually I'm just like, okay, this isn't working. I reset and I give up. So now let's jump to the level 13 strategy. How much of a difference does Metal Claw make? Just watch. While it's frustratingly short of a clean one-shot, we go from dealing minor chip damage to landing like massive 98% health hits. Roxanne does stall with potions and makes it go on a little bit longer than it should, but it's still pretty smooth, it's straightforward, and that's going to be our first badge down. From there, I head back up to Route 116 so we can complete the main story part. We do the Pico quest, and I'm going to catch a Meryl, but I do have to call myself out here. I mistakenly tried to make some changes here. I thought I could catch a Shroomish, and I thought it learned Cut. It doesn't. I completely wasted my time. I went back into Petalburg Woods, I found one, I caught it, I dealt with the menus, and since it doesn't learn Cut, I eventually had to deposit it in my PC. It was a pretty careless mistake, and I would say overall this cost me probably several minutes of in-game time. I'm not making excuses, but admittedly it's been about 9 months since I played Emerald, so your boy was a little bit rusty despite multiple test runs. I just thought I would insert a Shroomish. I didn't double check. It is what it is. Now, as we sail down to Dewford, it's time to slow down and address something that's a little bit less positive about Aggron. Up until now, I've mostly played strong Pokemon that just breeze through these early challenges. Aggron, however, isn't quite on that level. It's not necessarily a bad Pokemon, but there are a lot of tricky puzzles and challenges ahead. First, I am going to grab the silk scarf. It's something that none of my previous runs have needed. And yes, just so we're clear, I'm still using the pink bow graphic on my overlay. The normal top damage boosting item will always be pink bow in my eyes. It's the true king, so we're using it here. Let's get back to the negatives. Aggron's got two major issues working together in tandem. First is the topping. Early generation steel tops are fantastic and they deserved the nerf they got later, but when you pair steel with rock, I think it's a net negative overall. Specifically, you're going to add double weaknesses from fighting and ground, and plus, get this, they throw in a brand spanking new water weakness. Now with Brawly as the second gym leader and Emerald famously known for having too much water, these weaknesses loom around every corner as illustrated earlier by that random Machop on Route 116. Coupled with that, and just to make sure the topping holds us back as much as possible, we are in the patented slow growth rate. Aside from the obvious downside of needing extra experience, Emerald's early game is uniquely restrictive. Without spoiling too much, the first 3 gyms and even the rival fight south of Mauville, they're major hurdles, and there's minimal wiggle room aside from just simply grinding levels and fighting trainers. While I love Emerald's overall design, I think a couple of extra rare candies like in Gen 1 would greatly help Pokemon that struggle early on. But enough of that setup, I think it's time we dive into
Brawly, brother.
Here's footage from the blind run where I'm entering at level 15 just to kind of test the waters. Now we'll discuss the battle thoroughly, but first watch how this initial attempt unfolds. Machop goes down in 2 hits, I get a flinch from headbutt, that lets me avoid damage. Meditite is harmless as long as you keep attacking, can't do anything. And then comes Makuhita, and this is where the trouble truly begins. You'll soon understand my pain when you see the damage from Vital Throw, yet somehow I get absurdly lucky on my very first attempt. I land a critical hit and I just clinch a first try victory. Now this situation right here reminds me of the Gyarados run in Gen 1 that I did, where I also faced a double weakness against Lieutenant Surge and unexpectedly won on my first blind run attempt. There were some comments, there were some viewers that questioned, hey, why would you just reset despite winning? And to clarify, just so no one twists my words, blind runs exist purely for testing. Winning by sheer luck once doesn't mean that it's a reliable or optimal strategy. Resetting allows me to properly assess the difficulty, I can gauge the consistency, and I can just determine if I need further leveling or adjustments. Now with that in mind, I do reset here multiple times just to get a realistic view of the average fight, just free from all the flukes. Now as expected, some footage has been going by in the background. Machop alone can easily just end me if it chooses the right moves, but Makuhita is the true barrier. It has a citrus berry, it provides too much extra resilience, and then Vital Throw hits incredibly hard. Ideally, you would deal about 40% damage, you would avoid the berry trigger, survive a hit, and then finish it off with a stronger move, but Aggron just doesn't quite have the stats for that yet. And after about 8 or so resets during this early testing, I realized it's probably best just to move forward and grind a little bit more and just to revisit Brawly later when we're a little bit stronger. Onward to Slateport, I'm going to be picking up a handful of battles along the beach. Now there are probably better combinations of trainers to fight, but I do choose to fight all 3 inside the house so that we can, hey, you already know, we're going to get that sweet Sody Pop. That's the reward you get here. But specifically this little kid in the bottom right, he's trash. He's really bad for experience. I do 5 total battles here. I set my warp point in Slateport, finish up the story bits with the Devon goods in the museum, and then I'm going to backtrack to Brawly's gym, fight a few trainers inside, and now I'm level 18 and we're going to give Brawly another try. At this level, the ranges definitely, they're better, but it doesn't always feel better, if that makes sense. To touch on why I would backtrack right now, it was because it made the most sense in terms of efficiency. If I went north of Slateport, I would have to walk further to get this done now, and if I just went ahead and set my warp point in Slateport, I could come down here and then teleport back after. There's also a lot of experience breakpoints during the early part of the game, and just being higher level later just helps out Aggron a lot. As for this fight, I am I'm able to progress to the end, but the Makuhita, I just can't withstand his attacks, and I'm gonna go down for the first reset of the actual run. Now I run it back, and I do get a crit here, but since I've already looked at the numbers and this is the optimized playthrough, I was willing just to take a crit. You can win this without a crit, and you might be wondering, hey, why would you take this result but you willingly reset on the first one? That's because this isn't the blind run. I already know. You know what? I don't have to explain myself to you. We got the second badge. That's all that matters. Being at least level 18 now is great because I absolutely hate the two Pokefans north of Slateport with the Plusle and Minun. They might very well be the most annoying trainers in the entire game because you are all but guaranteed to leave these battles paralyzed in the best case scenario. And it just gets more annoying the slower your Pokemon is. At least I can one-shot them here at level 18, but I still get paralyzed, and I just want to say for everybody to know, I want to say it loudly, I hate this battle, I hate these people. Now let me talk about what is ahead and where more obstacles lie. The rival that you fight before Mauville is pretty terrible. Giving her a Mudkip means it either has double super effective ground damage or it has water attack, so both of those are pretty rough. This means that I have to get the Trick Room candy, and let me get my thoughts here because I think we skipped the Trick Room candy on my other runs, but in my opinion, and I don't even think this is really an opinion, this is the slowest candy to get out of the many candies in Generation 3, and it just so happens to be the only candy you have access to before you beat the 3rd gym, or the 4th gym even when you get the goggles. In a run like this, it's fine to get because I already have to grind a lot anyway, but as you can see what's going on here. It's a cut-based puzzle with 3 trainers sprinkled in, and even when you are done, you have to go to another room, talk to the Trick Master, and then you have to leave through this obnoxiously long hallway to get out. Now again, I have to grind anyway, I need the levels, but in the future, I think diagnosing if a Pokemon struggles in the early game can be directly correlated to if you have to get the Trick Room candy or not. I'm also going to fight a handful of trainers on Route 103 to the west of the Trick Room, and we can just skip over that, but now let's talk about the rival fight. I end up being level 22 after training, and it's a very specific level and pretty much as high as I was willing to go because I'm already spending an enormous amount of time in the early game. Now you can get a one-shot range on Lombre, but I crit. Not really a problem, just thought I would say it. The problem here is Marsh Stomp. Now it's about to Marsh Stomp a mud hole in me. I outspeed, and at level 22 I have around a 70% chance to two-shot it, but the main thing is that I need to survive 2 hits. I headbutt, do about half, Mudshot does heavy damage, lowers my speed, and that means Marsh Stomp takes a second turn, but Aggron does survive with just 3 health, headbutt gets the favorable range, I get it down, and even though I'm really low, Slugma can slug my balls, it goes down, and that's another fight over with. Believe it or not, the training is not done. Wattson is yet another fight that Aggron struggles with a little bit, so I'll be taking on the trainers on Route 118, and then I'll be fighting every trainer inside of Mauville Gym. This will get me to level 26, and with the candy, I can hit level 27, which will let me outspeed the Magneton by a single point. Now there's also the move tutor for rollout here, and if you need to know anything about me, I'm a big fan of the move rollout. I even like Fury Cutter a lot. I think rollout is a fantastic move, and with stab from us being a rock type, it can be a very, very powerful tool if used correctly. But let's take a look at Wattson. The plan here is to survive, objective survive. We want to keep the Cherry Berry intact, but that's not always in your control. You don't outspeed Voltorb, it can chip you a little bit, but Headbutt does have a pretty decent one-shot range. You can just take it out and move on. Electrike has a solid chance to use Howl since you have solid health here, and this is where I start to use Rollout. It could survive one, but that's a good thing because we can get the Rollout counter moving up with the goal of getting to a 3rd Rollout when we finally take it out. Now this can paralyze you with its ability, but it's a pretty low chance. I don't see it here, and now it's time for Magneton. Since I outspeed at level 27, I roll out, do about half damage. It's gonna go for Thunder Wave, which I cure with my Cherry Berry, and the 4th chain of rollout wipes it out. Now at this point, I'm healthy enough that even if I miss the rollout, I can probably maybe still straight up take the Manectric on, but it just goes for Thunder Wave, I hit the rollout, and we take the badge. Now this battle was pretty awful, and I think looking back and the playthroughs that I did and how things turned out, I wonder if the better play was to do this at a lower level, because I sunk a lot of time into this. I would also like to ask you guys something, because my Generation 3 knowledge isn't as great as like Gen 1 or Gen 2, but I know about speed control. Now, for instance, I know if you outspeed Roxanne's nose pass, for example, it'll use Rock Tomb as a form of speed control, and once it outspeeds, it'll default to other moves like Tackle or Harden, unless it calculates that Rock Tomb can knock you out. It's my understanding that moves like Thunder Wave aren't always used in the same way. I don't know if that's true. I think the evidence here is something that we just saw. Manectric outsped me and it went for Thunder Wave anyway. But there's just a lot of interesting quirks about the AI in Gen 3. Now you might also be wondering, hey, is rollout the best strategy? And it might not have been. I did try Mud Slap. With soft sand found on the beach, you can get Magneton into a very clean 100% two-shot range just because it's double weak to ground. But the problem is that you'll likely take a little bit more damage and you'll still have to survive Manectric. Mud Slap is pretty useless since it does significantly less damage than Headbutt on anything other than the Magneton, and Shockwave just bypasses accuracy anyway, so you can't cheese it in that sort of way. What I'm trying to say is that I do 3 runs, I still use the 3-run rule, but I think there were a lot of things that I'm still unsure of, and I'll keep trying to talk about them as I do this voiceover. Hell, I might even decide to do the run over by the time I get to the end of it. As far as the game goes, things finally relax for a long while, and this is the part where we do one big gigantic loop before going up the lift to Mount Chimney, but I do learn secret power here. It's just a little bit better than Headbutt. It's basically like a baby body slam in most situations, and I am going to pick up a Carbos and a Protein here. Next up is the first Maxi battle, and this one, hey, it's a shocker. It's pretty bad as well. With how many battles up to this point have been pretty awful, it makes me wonder if I was just missing something obvious. But I'm gonna get my attack drop via Intimidate, and then I'm gonna get Sand Attack. And I just throw up Rollout, and I just hope for the best. The problematic part of this fight is Magnitude on the Camerupt, and the only alternate strategy that I could think of here is eating everything the Mightyena throws at you. Maybe start to boost your defense, and with something like Iron Defense, you could just tank the damage with like 400 defense from the Camerupt. But even though I do first try this one, there's just a lot of potential just to get murdered here. Flannery is a bit of a weird fight because just like Maxi, she also has a Camerupt, but it just doesn't know Magnitude. Oddly enough, it's only the Nummel, and it's not really threatening, but I kind of do mess up this battle here a little bit. But through the power of Rollout, all things are possible. Jot that down, and Aggron is enjoying a really straightforward path through the game after a pretty rough start. Now it's time for the lead up to Norman. Now I'm gonna go grab a rare candy in the desert and make my journey towards Petalburg. And as I do this, I want to go back and talk about Aggron's first ability, Sturdy, because my knowledge of Pokemon is like a hodgepodge of all the generations. And if you're like me, when you think of Sturdy, you think it prevents you from being knocked out from full health and will instead leave you at 1 HP. But that was actually a Gen 5 and onward change. When you get to Gen 3, it just makes you immune to one-hit KO moves like Fissure or Horn Drill. Now I have played Emerald a pretty decent amount, and I cannot ever recall seeing an OHKO move in the game, so I did what I do best. I checked the game code. There are 4 OHKO moves in the game. Horn Drill, it never appears. There are 4 instances of Fissure, there are 3 instances of Guillotine, and there are 2 instances of Sheer Cold. Now out of those 9 times that OHKO moves appear on the enemy teams, only 1 of those appear regularly in a playthrough, and that's on Glacia's Walrein. The other 8 times are mixed into the 8th gym leader Juan's team on a rematch. Now if you didn't know, you can use the match call to have rematches after you have 5 gyms. Pretty sure you got to beat the Elite 4 to do the gym leaders. And the long and short of what I'm trying to say here is that Juan has 4 different rematch teams, and he gains 8 of the 9 OHKO moves in the game throughout them. What this means, what this translates to, is that Sturdy is an extremely bad and useless ability unless maybe you're trying to beat the game at like level 5 and for some reason the only thing that's holding you back is Glacia's Walrein. And even then I bet the AI is good enough to say, hey, I don't need to use an OHKO move, I can just use anything. But I digress. And all that is to say that I just really wanted to share my findings with you guys. Sturdy kind of sucks. Norman is a fight that a lot of runs worry about, but here's the plan. We're not going to be using Dig today. I have Iron Tail, and I can use it to guarantee the one-shot on Spinda, but the 75% accuracy, it's not the best. But this is going to be one of the 2 fights in the entire game that I'll be relying on it heavily. Slacking comes in second, and it can be a little bit scary and a little bit weird, especially because we're slower, but as long as you keep that in mind and you get your turn counts right, you can avoid it using counter on you because it will destroy you. I'm going to be using Mud Slap during the counter turns. I will take a little bit of damage, and then when it's loafing around, I'm going to use Iron Tail. Now this is a fine strategy, but the problem is that it just takes forever to progress in the fight. I even take a nap during the battle, I rest up and I wake up and I continue, but when it's finally done, I make it past, I'm missing 2/3 of my health, and we have 2 Pokemon left. Vigoroth can't really do a ton of damage, but I am low enough to the point to where it's kind of a problem. Now in this moment, I thought that this was pretty much 100% a reset, so I did the only thing a man can do in this situation. I started up a rollout. When in doubt, roll out. That's what my granddad used to always say. Now if I can survive a few turns, the damage will just get so high that it won't matter, and after throwing the Hail Mary, I'm at a mere 5 health, and the Lanoon outspeeds me, so this is battle over. Well, it goes for Facade, it's resisted, it does a whopping 2 damage to me. I retaliate for about 4,000 damage, and we win a very unlikely battle. With access to Surf, I can pick up some more candies, but more importantly, the citrus berries will be invaluable for the run. Then I have my rendezvous with Shelly and her perfect hair. Look how dreamy she is, and now it's time for that next rival battle. Once again, it's the same problem, Marshtomp, and it's double super effective damage. Now I go back and forth with Lombre, and now we're gonna see kind of like an exact example of AI in Gen 3 and speed control. Mudshot easily does the most damage, you can see. It does about 40% of my life, but it drops my speed below Marshtomp. And the computer here is gonna say, all right, my speed control move has gotten me the speed advantage, and I guess I'll use Mud Sport and Takedown now, and I just win. That's just how it works in this game. Now there is a Slugma at the end. I don't want to dog on Slugma too much, but it may as well be a bag of dirt. It would be more of a challenge then, probably. After the battle, I get the HM for Fly, and Scott from the Battle Frontier is going to come up and give me his thoughts. And that's going to be the perfect segue to talk about the overall ROM changes that got me back into Pokemon Emerald. So back in June, Scott from Scott's Thoughts, if you didn't know who I was talking about, if you didn't get the reference, he released his Gen 3 overlay to the public. Now since I make my own overlay, I'm not really interested in that overlay, but what I was interested in was a patch file for Pokemon Emerald. Now to keep this short, Emerald was kind of a nightmare to run for my other videos. Working with the Poke Emerald assembly was just fickle and required a lot of knowledge. You had offsets, you had to deal with DMA, encryption, and what this mainly meant was that you could not change or set a lot of properties within the game, and I had to use outside tools like PK Hex, which let me upload my save file so that I could edit the starter, edit the IVs, hidden power type, all those things. And this meant that I had to start a game, save in front of Professor Birch, close the game, upload the save file, edit it, save it, start the game back up. And there were even instances within the playthrough where I had to re-upload my save file to change maybe some things like event flags or something like that. And not to harp on this all day, I had problems, I guess you would say extra problems, because it was a modified custom ROM that I made. Now as much as I love playing Emerald, it was a little bit tedious, and all of that is to say that Scott and his team, they released a patch that removed DMA and encryption from the game, ultimately giving you full control over basically everything that I already like to do with Gen 1 and Gen 2. So I messed around with it, liked what I saw, but it was missing a couple of things that I liked. So then I reached out to Scott and I said, hey, is there any way you could add like a custom Tropius flag, maybe add a guaranteed catch rate flag? And Scott, being the insanely nice guy that he is, he got it done within a few hours. He said, sure, and he got it done. And he even found other addresses like rollout counters when I asked him to. And just a huge shout out to Scott for doing a great job with the ROM, but then going out of his way to add custom things for me so I can play how I like to play. Now the one trade-off, there's one thing I had to trade off, is that I no longer have instant text. Like I'd prefer that, but it was an absolute nightmare to code in the first place, and I can live without it. From there, I touched up my code, my graphics, plugged in the new properties into the overlay, changed up some things, and here we are finally able just to play through Emerald again. I know this is a very, very long-winded section, but it's hard to know what goes on behind the scenes. Like what you're seeing on the screen, how did we get to that point? And I just personally thought it was really neat to finally be able to play Emerald seamlessly. In fact, Emerald is now the most seamless game that I have in my arsenal. I can actually play every Pokemon from a single ROM. I don't even have to make new ROMs to set the starter like I do in older games. And I just think that's really, really cool. But before I lose every single viewer because I'm sitting here rambling about ROMs, let's get back to the game. This part of the game after Fortree is my favorite part of the game. You got the tall grass, the scenery is just very nostalgic to me. You got the rain going on, but the only thing of note here is that there's 4 rare candies in this little stretch of the game, and my goal is to unlock the Lily Cove flight path and then progress to Mount Pyre. Now the battles here are not interesting, but there is some little coding differences that I've implemented to fix one of my few annoyances I had with the game. In Emerald, you are forced to do 4 double battles. 2 of them you can't do anything about, and the other 2, including this double battle hill right here in Mount Pyre, I wrote some code that automatically faints the rest of my party, leaving me with just my starter. And what this does to the game is it stops the double battle, and it forces these 2 aqua grunts to fight me in a single file line, one at a time. Now I know this is actually slower than just fighting both at the same time, but I'm willing to take the hit because I think it fits more in line with the spirit of a solo run, and I'm firmly gonna stick with this. Now I've said it before and I'll say it again, if Gen 3 was easier to make big changes to, I would change Tate Liza and that Steven Stone battle in the space station into a single battle as well. This is neither here nor there, but my other change that I would do is I would put Wallace back as the 8th gym leader, and I would put Steven Stone back as the champion, but it's fine. We'll stick with Juan and we'll like it. I'm a broken record today, guys, but here is yet another battle that required a lot of thought, and it's for one reason. Now at this point, I have put Hidden Power Rock over Rollout for more consistent damage. It's actually more damage for the first 2 turns. Rollout doesn't start to outpace this until the 3rd turn, but I digress. We don't need to get into that. The problem is Altaria. It has Earthquake, it outspeeds, and in practice, she could go straight Earthquake, pick up the 2-shot, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm a slightly higher level here, and it looks like the computer wanted just to set up Dragon Dance to maybe go for the 1-shot, but Hidden Power and its 210 effective power leaves it with just a sliver, triggers a Hyper Potion, and I'm gonna get the range on the next turn. I'm gonna win this one, but I did mismanage my power points here. I'm gonna run out of PP and have to swap to like Secret Power towards the end of the fight, but it's fine. The Citrus Berry that I'm wearing is also for Altaria. We don't get to see it here, but it just guarantees that we can survive a 2nd Earthquake and have enough health left over so that the rest of the fight isn't just her going for kill shots. Moving ahead to the Magma Hideout, this is where I feel I made a mistake that really cascaded throughout the playthrough. I'll touch on its effects as we go on, but after the Tabitha fight, I'm popping 6 rare candies to get to level 43 in preparation for the next Maxi battle. And I got a good bit to say here, but let's kind of cover what actually happens, and I'll pause a little bit here and there if I have to, because I've thought about this a lot. Intimidate plus Scary Face puts you in a precarious position because Camerupt has Earthquake. It's a guaranteed 2-shot, and you're not going to outspeed at that point. What actually happens here is that we see a Swagger, which gives me a 2-stage attack boost. The confusion doesn't really matter, but it puts my damage way up higher than it's supposed to be. And when we get to the Camerupt, it's just going to go for Amnesia, and the net +1 attack from Swagger, it lets me just 1-shot it, and the Crobat's not really a factor. And I'm going to be the first to say this right now. I had some really bad practice runs preparing for this battle, and I played way too conservative here, and I had tunnel vision on this fight because I was scared. I think this is the exact moment that I made a huge mistake using very valuable resources for this fight, and looking back through the footage and taking a closer look, I think you could probably be like level 38 for this fight. Now, first of all, Camerupt is not guaranteed to use 2 Earthquakes like we've seen in the footage. Now, second, if you take a closer look at Mightyena, you'll see that it only has Takedown for damage, which we resist. I think the play is to bait out Swagger, maybe even 2 Swaggers, use the Citrus Berry Berry to guarantee that you're just a little bit more resilient, have a little bit more health if you need it, and just sweep through the fight with the boosted attack. You can just tank the earthquakes at that point. Now obviously hindsight's 20/20, but I think even if you have to reset several times, saving 6 rare candies would be a massive time save, even with the reset penalties I use. But remember, this fight is where the start of some of my bad decisions came from, so remember this fight. The Aqua Hideout does feature a very rare Matt versus Matt showdown, but it's not really too interesting in itself. Remember, you're just fighting an admin here, not a leader like Maxie, so obviously it's going to be a little bit easier, but this is going to lead us to an extremely long training and grinding montage that is a direct result of losing all those candies for the Maxie fight. First up, let me call out another mistake. Maybe it's the game's mistake, I'll let you decide. When you arrive on the shore, the game literally pops up saying Moss Deep City, so you're in Moss Deep City. It made me think that I got the flight path. Now spoiler alert, I did not get the flight path, and I'm gonna waste a good bit of time. What I wanted to do is get the flight path, go up to Shoal Cave, get the High Tide candy, but I'm not gonna complain too much. But what I will say is that this is exactly how you unlock the Lily Cove flight path. You just walk in, Lily Cove pops up on the screen, you leave and you got the flight path. And I just think it's very weird behavior for the game to not treat Moss Deep City the same. Maybe you're not actually in Moss Deep City until you go up the stairs, I don't know. So just in the future, you have to actually go into the town to get the flight path because it will not count it if it says Moss Deep on the screen. And that's just some useless information for somebody out there. Next is a bit of a weird one. I'm gonna go to the Slateport Mart to buy vitamins. Now let me explain some things here because I need substitute as well. And you can just buy vitamins in Lily Cove near it. So why did I go here to buy? The answer is that the way my EVs are set up, if I fought the rival before the Lily Cove Mart, I could only use 4 proteins. And if I went to Slateport first to buy vitamins, I could buy 5. And it was really critical to get a certain attack number. I really wanted 5 proteins. And that's like, I guess that's my reasoning. Now, speaking of that rival fight, it's really trivial at this level, but I think grinding out extra money, maybe doing this fight a little bit earlier when I unlock the flight path, or maybe doing this fight even before Maxie so that I could have substitute to make that fight a little better, maybe deal more damage in general. Maybe that'd be the play, I don't know. But I can't stress how important it was to have a lot of proteins, to buy those proteins. And we'll get to that later, exactly why. Now, my friends, here's the heavy cost of being in the slow level up group and using candies too early. I'm gonna go ahead and take that long trek down to Pacific Log, and I'm gonna battle essentially every single trainer along the way. I'm also gonna fight every single trainer inside of Tate and Liza's gym, and I'm not gonna show every single one of these battles. They're pretty boring. And if you want the raw numbers, I'm going to fight an insane 20 optional battles leading up to Tate and Liza. And this is what's crazy about it. This isn't even the last part of the game that I need to do extra battles, and I'm not sure how many battles I could cut with better candy usage. We might find out later, but it's a slow grind, and eventually I do make my way through. But I fight 20 trainers here, guys. I am gonna pick up Return in Pacific Log because it's basically at full power now, and I need all the damage I can get at this point. And I do pick up some high spots. There's a couple of candies, and you got old Fisherman Ronald here, who's an honorary rare candy. Usually you would only want to do this if you have electric moves because all of the Gyarados have Intimidate, but if you just set up a quick substitute, it'll ignore Intimidate and you can just get the one shots all the same. Now remember, I'm also fighting every single one of Tate and Liza's gym trainers. I'll be level 49. Now let's jump into that fight. Let's do a quick pause here because there's something I need to address. I've changed the rules. I was really big on the Tropia strategy in this battle. I talked about it a lot in the other videos, but the long and short of everything here is that I changed my mind. Now we're just gonna have an Abra that's gonna get taken out very quick, and I like this idea because it's gonna be more of a challenge. I'm not gonna condemn anybody that would want to do anything like that, that's fine. But just very similar to the other double battles that I changed, even though they take longer, I just think this is more in the spirit of a solo run, just to let something get taken out real quick and just take my lumps, go ahead and just do this 2-on-1 battle. But this is pretty much how it's going to be going forward. And now let's kind of talk about the strategy real quick. Claydol is really tanky, and Claydol has Earthquake. Abra will get taken out immediately, and you will have to tank an Earthquake no matter what. There's nothing you can do about it. The Citrus Berry gives me more effective health, and this makes it to where Tate and Liza won't start going for kill shots when I get too low. And the key to this fight is that Return gives you a guaranteed 2-shot range on Claydol if you have at least around 92 base power on return. So let's kind of play this out. Abra gets murked instantly, which is what I want to see. Return does about half. Earthquake does more than half, triggers my Citrus Berry, and we are exactly where we want to be. Now return can take out the Claydol on the next turn, and now the rest of the battle is pretty simple with one caveat. I need to rely on Iron Tail to take out Solrock and Lunatone. 75% accuracy isn't the best, I've kind of talked about it earlier, but you do have a little bit of leeway here. You can maybe miss once or twice, but I make a mistake here. I take out Xatu first, and then I have to take on both rocks at the same time, and with Sunny Day, Solar Beam, Hypnosis for good measure, I'm gonna go down for another reset. The actual play here is to divide and conquer. Just use Iron Tail, take out the rocks immediately, just leave Xatu up because it can't do much to you. If you let both of these on the field at the same time, it gets a little trickier, so just Iron Tail, 2 easy one-shots on the rock, let Xatu do whatever it is that it does, and I think overall this is a preventable reset, but I'll take it. The Space Center battle is that last double battle. It's not really worth looking at, not much you can do about it, pretty easy. I do finally pick up Earthquake in the Seafloor Cavern, but I don't use it for a while. And we do fight Archie, but it's infinitely easier than Maxie. Now the levels are honestly not even that far apart from Maxie and Archie, but considering that this battle takes place after Tate and Liza, which is probably pound for pound the hardest challenge in the game, since it's just you versus multiple Pokemon, it just makes this easy by default, and he doesn't have a camera up. After that, it's finally time to wake up Rayquaza from his snooze, and finally we get to actually utilize our Rock Head ability. The tutor for Double Edge is in Pseudopolis, and it got a buff in Gen 3. It's actually a 120 base power move. Might have been buffed in Gen 2. I don't really care. It's 120 base power here, and this will be our default move of choice for the most part for the rest of the game. And inside of the gym, I'm actually going to fall down on purpose, and that's going to give me an additional 10 trainers to fight. And the goal here is to hit level 53 for Juan's Kingdra, and let's talk about that. Love Disc is a terrible Pokemon, and it exists solely just to let me set up Substitute before moving on. I did miscalculate some ranges here, but I'm gonna progress to the fight, and here's where I mess up. I missed the range on Crawdaunt. Crabhammer breaks my Substitute, which is fine, but let's talk about Kingdra. And I'm gonna lose this fight, just go ahead and tell you right now. Kingdra is a very annoying Pokemon. They make it so annoying in these games. It has Double Team, it'll just spam it sometimes, it does here. It has a Chesto Berry along with Rest just to regain all of its health. It has super effective damage with Water Pulse, and on top of all that, it's faster than me. Here I'm gonna miss about 22 double edges after it uses a couple of double teams, and that's just how the cookie crumbles. I'm gonna get reset, who cares? Jumping right back into that same spot, I do hit the ranges and I have a sub up for safety this time, but it's more or less the same thing. It's kind of like a coin flip to see if I actually hit, and once you do, you're gonna see the Chesto Rest, and it's even gonna use Rest again later. This means my only real play here is just to keep using my moves, hope I hit, and eventually it does go in my favor. But Kingdra, I don't know why they designed this thing to be so annoying. I mean, I like Kingdra, but just looking at Juan use Double Team and Rest, it just makes me like it less, you know what I'm saying? Now I'm gonna pick up several rare candies that I ignored and get some new ones that I can now get since I have access to Waterfall. But I wanna talk about two things specifically. First, I'm gonna go get Ice Beam from the abandoned ship, which seems crazy because I have lower special attack nature, and our special attack isn't even that good in the first place, but it will be useful later. Next, I'm getting a candy that you probably shouldn't get, and I hate getting myself. It's the Granite Cave candy, and it requires the Mach Bike, so you have to go switch to the Mach Bike from the Acrobike, and I'm gonna proclaim this loudly. Moving on the Mach Bike on higher speeds is the hardest thing that you can do in any Pokemon game. Go try it. Bump the game up to ×3 or ×4 speed and try to perfectly navigate through this cave on the Mach Bike. I would go as far to say that it's nearly impossible. Now this candy is probably absolutely not worth it if you play on a real strict real-time clock, but let's be real, I allow myself some leeway with some save states in the overworld so that I'm not punishing myself every time I play Pokemon, and I just honestly wanted to show this in the video. Just look at how many times I fell here, and I just really wanted to do this for science. Now to talk about this candy on like a mechanical gameplay level, it will allow me to cut out a a massive 6 trainers inside of Victory Road. So at least on paper, it is faster to grab this candy than to do a whole 6 battles. And plus, I think the practice does make perfect. You can never get any better at getting this candy if you just never even try it. So I think practicing it is a good idea. I think there are some bad runs that would make good use of this candy, but I digress. And we'll watch through the Wally battle in Victory Road because I don't really want to show all these extra trainers. I was fighting every single one of them in Victory Road. They're very spread out. I had to learn the whole entire layout of Victory Road, but it's actually pretty quick once you can cut out a lot of them, getting that candy in Granite Cave. And what this means is that as I get to the end and I'm about to leave Victory Road, I'm going to be level 57. I have 9 rare candies. That means I'm going to go into the Elite Four at level 66, and I think that we're ready just to dive in. Here's the thing, if you try to hold off on candies, it makes these first few battles really tough, and I just don't think it's worth it. Now what you're gonna see is that even though I'm a high level, it's still not the easiest or the fastest fight in the world. With Mighty Inna's Intimidate, I don't have a great one-shot range, and as a result, I just kind of two-shot everything. It's slow, it's steady, and I do gotta give a big shout out to Substitute for blocking Sand Attack, which would make this one even worse. Now the theme for most of these battles here at the end is that they're not fast. I'm not one shot sweeping through every single thing, but the important thing that I care about is that they are not much of a threat to give me a reset. BB was another one that you might not think much of at first, but the Dust Cops are kind of trolls. They have Protect. They're pretty bulky. You're not going to one-shot them. They have Curse. Luckily, Substitute can block that. But this battle right here was originally one of the things I wanted to be higher level for. Originally in routing, the Bonnettes were just destroying me. A neutral Thunderbolt was just doing way too much damage, and I could not outpace anything. I was having to two-shot everything, and being this higher level and being able to one-shot the Bonnettes specifically really changed the game. But I will call myself out here. I ran out of Hidden Power Rock PP, and I had to use Ice Beam on Sableye. Very minor mistake. I could have done better. And you might be thinking, hey, why haven't you taught Earthquake yet? And to that, I say, just watch a few more minutes, you impatient motherfucker. And finally, on Glacia, hallelujah, guys, we get a dream battle. It's an opponent that it's incredibly weak to rock, and those extra levels I needed for the final battle make this as smooth as butter. I actually one-shot every single thing, and at this point, we're inching closer and closer towards the end. Now, if you haven't put it together, 2 and 2 together yet, Drake is why I have Ice Beam. I don't even care about the order of the battle. You can set up Substitute, you can kind of do whatever against Shelgon. It's not really that good, but the main problem of this fight is Flygon. It has a stab double super effective Earthquake, and it's faster than you. I failed a lot here trying to figure out the solution, and with Kingdra, it's hard to make the Substitute last, but it turns out that it doesn't really matter if you have high special or not, because the crazy concept is that Ice Beam, hey, if Ice Beam is double super effective, it's going to obliterate in one shot all the same, and that's how I ended up planning out this battle. It went from what felt like a 50-50 shot of winning to like a near 100% success rate with this strategy. Now, some quick notes before I wrap it up here is that once again, the Citrus Berry is great. Even if you don't get a lucky freeze on the Kingdra like I did, you'll probably be around 40 health on the Flygon after it earthquakes. So that means you eat the berry and you get back out of the range that Salamence would be able just to finish you off. Very solid strategy, not really much else to say about it. And now I think we can move on to the final battle of the run. I need to pause this one because there's one huge breakpoint I had to hit for this fight. I needed to be around 244 to 246 attack, and as much as I fumbled the ball in some areas, I planned out the champion fight masterfully, and let's talk about why. Water Spout has a gigantic, huge 150 base power that would obliterate every Aggron to ever exist in the entire world, but Water Spout's power scales with the health that Wailord has. So the puzzle and the equation to solve for this fight was how much damage do I need to do to the Wailord so that I can keep a substitute set up and not have it break. With Double Edge, the pink bow, and having several extra proteins, you can hit that pixel perfect damage range to keep your substitute up, and you're gonna see it play out almost like I practiced it a ton of times. Crazy, who would practice Pokemon runs, you know what I'm saying? And the substitute is important for two reasons, but to me the biggest reason is that substitute blocks Intimidate from Gyarados, and if you had your attack lowered, you'd probably need to be like level 100 here, but Hidden Power Rock takes it out, and I have learned Earthquake. It's specifically to get that guaranteed one tap on Tentacruel. Ludicolo has very favorable ranges of being taken out by a double edge, and finally the substitute, the second part it's really good for is Melodic. This thing can do a ton of damage and you can't one-shot, so the ability to tank a free surf really helps out here tremendously. We take it out, and finally at the end is Whiscash. Don't get me wrong, Whiscash can do a lot of damage, and I take a risk here. I don't set up substitute, and it is going to hit me, and it almost takes me out, but the risk pays off. Aggron seals the deal, and that means we have a new champion. Aggron finishes with a game time of 5 hours, 16 minutes, and 32 seconds, and while I don't think that this is a terrible time, you guys know what I'm all about. I want solid runs over content, and despite me being balls deep in an advanced physics class that's taking up like 90% of my free time, I noticed and talked about enough things to know that if the video ended here, there would be just too much left on the table, so I'm going to dive back in, and we're going to try to get Aggron the run that it deserves. Outside of human error, there really wasn't much to change in the early game. I did swap up some of the trainers, but kept the same end result all the way up to Wattson. An example of this change is going to be the optional rival before you go down to Dewford. I vastly underestimated the experience that this battle gives, but I didn't really break a sweat. There was no chance of a reset, but it wasn't just like really quick or anything. And I do think it's kind of weird that the Mudkip just used Bite here, but I'm not really going to question it. I will touch on Brawly because I kept that same strategy, but I didn't really talk about Metal Claw that much. There's a 10% chance to raise your attack, and if you count hitting the Makuhita once, that means you have 5 chances to get the attack boost. Now, I'm a statistics nerd, and if you want to know the probability of hitting a 10% chance if you try 5 times, it's roughly about 41% chance, and I think that's actually pretty good. Now, I actually get it on turn 1 here, but we've covered the battle earlier in the video. I just really couldn't pass up the opportunity to talk about probability. Moving on, right before Wattson, I was getting to level 26 using the candy, getting to level 27, but I wanted to save candy to alleviate the 57 extra battles I was doing later, so I'll pick up a few extra battles to hit 27 naturally. I go north, I fight an Aroma Lady, which is kind of a weird title if you think about it. That's neither here nor there. And I'm gonna go ahead and fight the Winstraight family, all of them, the whole family line. And here I make a bold call. At level 25, you learn Takedown. And I know it's kind of taboo and everybody hates lower accuracy moves, but it's 20 base power stronger than Headbutt or Secret Power, and it just lets me hit ranges and pick up 1-shots or 2-shots that I otherwise would not be able to. I think 85% accuracy is fine. Like for example, in Generation 1, I've never had a problem using Fire Blast, and I don't mind missing here and there. I just really enjoyed the harder hitting move that synergized with the Rock Head ability. Now, to be fully transparent, I did have 2 additional run restarts because of some awful luck just missing a bunch of moves, but that's mainly because I'm a stickler and I just wanted to see how good of a run I could actually get. As for Wattson, nothing really changes. Not that it really matters much, but I think there was like a 33% chance to one-shot Voltorb with Headbutt, whereas Takedown pushes that to a 100% guaranteed chance to one-shot it, but it really doesn't matter much, but I just wanted to give you an example. Now what's funny to me is I actually think this battle plays out nearly identical to the original one, but from here things are going to stay the same for quite a while. After Winona is where I basically just rerouted the entire game, but in this footage here, you do actually see the Altaria go for a turn 1 Earthquake, and this kind of shows the effectiveness of the Citrus Berry strat. I get low, but that extra health just nudges the AI just to continue to do normal things, and I'm able to get through, so let's kind of get into what's different. There's a nugget outside of Lava Ridge that I wasn't picking up. Remember, I'm still kind of inexperienced at Emerald. I have played a lot, but I don't know everything. And this little influx of money allows me to take a slightly risky fight against the Lily Cove rival right now instead of waiting for a while. Now, the battle looks super easy in the footage, and that's because Marshtomp missed a move. But this experience is pretty important. This battle gives a lot of experience. But what's even more important is that I have a ton of money now, and I can just buy vitamins right here. Now, remember, Proteins are very important, and the carbos for speed never hurts either. And I kind of mess up my money a little bit, and I have to like desperately sell some super potions, but I'm able to combine some shop visits here, get extra early experience, which is very important, and I'm able to get the vitamins much earlier to give myself an extra boost. And the cherry on top is that I can go ahead and get substitute, but I don't really think an early substitute is a huge advantage. I'm just kind of here already. I don't want to come back. The extra rival experience allowed me to hit level 38 for Maxi, which it was part of the previous route that I really hated. And I do think there are, just to touch on this more, I think there are two ways you could go about this. I think you could hold off on substitute and you could just use iron defense here. You could just make it to where you can just tank the Camerot's damage no problem all day, every day. But I did touch on trying to get a swagger since Mightyena can't really hurt you. It only has takedown. I don't go that route. I go the substitute route. Obviously you can see it on the screen. But if you have a sub set up for Camerot, you're pretty safe, even if it outspeeds you. Now with the lower level, I barely miss the one shot, even with the boosted damage, but I do get a super potion, and this allows me to still get it down. And just like I thought, just like we hypothesized, this battle wasn't worth using resources for. And let me reiterate this here. I saved 6 rare candies on this part, and just like the last run, this is gonna have cascading effects on the entire run, but in a completely opposite and positive way. Before Tate and Liza, I'm still gonna be making that trip down to Pacific Log so I can pick up Return, but I'm only gonna take on efficient trainers like our old pal Ronald here. But guys, I want you to take a guess at how many trainers that I cut out of this final run. Remember, I fought every trainer on the way down to Pacific Log. I fought every optional inside of Tate and Liza's gym, and I was fighting all 10 optional trainers inside of Juan's gym. And that was pretty much all a direct result of losing all those rare candies in the magma hideout. Guys, lads, fellas, everybody listening and gathering close, I was able to cut out 27 optional battles total for this final run, and if that sounds insane, it is. It's utterly insane, and saving those candies honestly made this run feel pretty different. And I think it's very important for everybody, each individual, not even just talking about Pokemon, to take a look at yourself sometimes and say, I made a mistake, I can do better. And that's what the differences in these runs was. So I end up spreading the candies out for the rest of the run, but remember, Emerald has a ton of candies. I'm going to use 5 during the Tate and Liza gym section, and the battle's basically the same with the same ranges, with the difference being that Return is just slightly weaker overall since I didn't do like 400 extra battles. And I'm actually going to have a reset here. It's the first reset of the run because no matter how you slice it, this is just a really unfair battle, and if you miss an Iron Tail or just get unlucky, you're in a bad spot. But I felt really good about the run from this point on. I eventually used a couple more candies to hit level 53 for Juan, and going through this run one more time made me dislike Kingdra even further. Just look at how long it takes me to get through this thing. I don't even miss any moves. That's the kicker right there. It uses double team, but I just don't miss. But with hyper potions and rest and the Chesto Berry, it feels like this lasts forever. But that's 8 badges down, and from there we're kind of sticking to the same script as last time. I do actually go back to the Granite Cave candy that requires the Mach Bot because number 1, like I said, practice makes perfect, and I need that practice. And number 2, I had cut out so many trainers that it did push me to the point to where I needed a candy. But I will say that most Pokemon just will probably cut this candy out. There's no probably about it. There are like 16 candies in the game before the post game, and if I revisited runs like Blaziken or Rayquaza, you already know I'm cutting out like 5 or 6 of these candies easily, maybe 7 or 8, and this is one of the longer candies. But it just so happens that Aggron needs to grab all 16. But I'll say this just one more time. If you play Emerald and you play the game at higher speeds, try to do this puzzle on the Mach Bot. It's so frustrating. From there, I don't even have to battle every single trainer in Victory Road. I just need to get to level 58. I have 8 candies left over, and the goal is the same as last time, be entering the Elite Four at level 66. But if we skip over to Sydney, it felt a little bit better. It's hard to explain. Now, first of all, I do have slightly more attack due to how I handled vitamins and routing, but I also kept Iron Tail to pick up some pesky ranges that were just really close. I'm still gonna want Ice Beam and eventually change that to Earthquake, but Iron Tail gives you that pop, you know what I'm saying? let's mess up my audio by saying pop a few times. And if you think about it this way, even if you miss Iron Tail, accuracy's bad, I get it, little Timmy. Even if you miss, you're gonna two-shot anyway, so it's a no harm, no foul type situation. And going back into the run also gives me the ability to actually talk about Drake and show relevant footage. I had a bit of a fluky looking battle the first time where I froze the Kingdra, but I talked about how my strategy felt guaranteed, but I didn't really get to show it off. So the same strategy as last time with an early sub into the Kingdra, and I don't get the freeze and it breaks my sub. So the Flygon is gonna come in and it outspeeds me, goes for Earthquake, and it hits me into a range where Salamence can easily clean up. But the Citrus Berry, guys, it's a beautiful held item. You can see that it pushes me just past the range of the damage that Salamence can do, so I can take it out. And since I outspeed Altaria, this one is done, and I think this is a good showcase of the strategy here. Finally, for Wallace, we kept it the same. I think everything was already very sound and solid and worked nearly every time, but like I said earlier, I have slightly more attack. And believe it or not, it makes things that much more consistent and gives you those extra percentages just to push things that much more in your favor. I get a crit on the Wailord after the sub, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to begin my sweep through the team. Remember, substitute blocks intimidate. That's what makes this fight work. It's the same as last time. The sub is still up against Melodic, but I got the ranges, and I do the same exact finish as last time. I disrespect the Wish Cash's damage, and the Majin Catfish gives me his best shot. He rocks Aggron to the very core, but when the dust settles, I survive with just a mere 2 HP. And after Wallace decides to stop trolling me after using like 8 full restores in a row, I eventually end the run. Aggron clocks in with a 4-hour, 50-minute, and 46-second time, shaving off nearly 26 minutes off of what I thought was a pretty optimized run at the time, but it just goes to show how much more I have to learn in regards to these Gen 3 games, especially when you're playing worse Pokemon. I think above all else, Aggron is an excellent Pokemon to learn the ins and outs of the game, rather than playing something that maybe just blitzes through everything and really just can't teach you some of the stuff. And I think it has enough weaknesses to really force you to strategize and think about things. I really enjoyed this playthrough. I also enjoyed my return to Emerald, and I hope you did too. I plan on at least doing a few more, and I'll gauge your guys' reaction to it if you like it or not. But if you enjoyed it, you could always leave me a little comment down below, a little comment ski down below. Now, if you made it this far, you're a real one. And I think this video is definitely going to be cutting it close. I kind of worked on it for a while. I had to work on the Emerald code. I had to like learn how to play the game again. And then when I did a few runs and started making the video, I was like, I have to play this again. So I had to go back into it. But that's neither here nor there. Let's not ramble. Special shout out to my channel members and patrons. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I'm going to leave you guys with this, a positive message. I want you guys to remember the power of manifesting positivity within your life, and just to not underestimate the effect of just having a good outlook and just having good vibes can have on your life. I think whatever you want to do in life, if you're just positive and you keep working away, you can make it happen. And at the end of the day, I just want everyone to succeed. And that's all I got to say. And I guess I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.